This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, and we take a look at the political pieces we call cartoons in this country. Today is the first day of October 2020, and I am DM.
I'm JM.
And I am GK. Happy new month to everybody. We are now firmly in Q4 of 2020. In case you missed the headlines, here they are.
Yeah.
In the Daily Nation, 405 parties line up for RUTO Raila duel.
Yeah.
In the Standard, Maraga's Tana gift for Uhuru, says the AG. And in the Star, revealed why KEMSA bosses are in trouble.
Yeah.
Let's start with the Daily Nation. I'm very intrigued about 405 parties.
Yes, a staggering number of applications have been launched at the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, of course, ahead of 2022. Now, so far, there are 86 parties, I believe, that are registered. Now, for a party to compete in an election, they have to be fully registered, not provisionally registered.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this because I think the reason why this the Registrar of Political Parties is inundated with applications is that amongst that 405 parties, one of them will be William Ruto's party. And so it is about spreading the risk. And having some of his parties reach the conclusion of registration and not face potential sabotage. But then also there could be another explanation. Kenyans are very enterprising people and they can see industry even in elections. So you accumulate parties
sell it to the highest bidder.
To sell it to the highest bidder, so people are hedging. But on a more serious note, this is just I mean, this number of political parties is ridiculous, and it just demonstrates a failure to distill ideas, I think, because a political party is supposed to house the philosophies that guide political action or political thought. Yeah. Now, surely there can't be 405 schools of thought. Yeah. Generally in the world. Yeah. Well, a political ideology is supposed to serve as a framework. Yeah. And generally in democratic nations or thinkings in the world, there's usually a spectrum of three. Yeah. There's the conservative parties, a spectrum of conservative parties, and those are people that believe that society should be organized within tradition. You know, these are people that are usually unwilling to change or apply ideas that have not been tested societally. And then there's the liberals, who believe society should be organized in a way that maximizes individual freedoms and liberties. Yeah. And then there's those ones that are in the middle, the moderates, whose outlook is kind of utilitarian. You are ready to be flexible on the individual level rather, if it is going to maximize common good.
Yeah, I like that. And that, just to add to your point, Ronald Reagan once said, a political party cannot be all things to all people. Yeah. It must represent fundamental beliefs, certain fundamental beliefs, which must not be compromised to political expediency or simply to swell its numbers. Yeah. So here we can see just how far you're trying to get us to think, DM, to be more philosophical, to have meaning to the party. Yeah. Right now, do you know what it means to be a member of Jubilee or even ODM?
Or any party? That is a strong no.
Interestingly, guys, the deputy president today tried to stage a coup in Jubilee House, or purported to stage a coup. He went into the board meeting of Jubilee House and held a meeting with his Tanga MPs. Yeah. I don't know if he's fighting for his party or he's simply going where he's not wanted.
That is curious, because I'm sure there's many other venues available to him.
To him, right?
So he's sending a message.
Exactly. Yeah. Strong message there. So we have a 3-part criteria that we will use to break down the headlines. We'll ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? I like this headline. It lifted the veil of ignorance. It's topical, ticks the boxes. Let's move to the Standard. Yes. Maraga's Tana
gift, yes. So the Attorney General, Kihara Kariuki, has done a court filing challenging CJ Maraga's landmark recommendation to dissolve Parliament before the term is complete. And what Kihara is saying, very simply, is if MPs are required to dissolve Parliament, their term has to be 5 years. It's not going to be a by-election story. We're going to start fresh. And if that happens, the president also needs another 5-year term. And that's the interpretation that he's leaning towards in terms of, this issue. And so he's saying, look, if you dissolve parliament, we are starting afresh. We're doing a reset. The president must get another 5 years.
Yeah.
And he's saying that ultimately this was an ill-advised recommendation. He did not consult Parliament. He did not consult the Attorney General. It was a very unilateral sort of move on his part to just decide, I'm going to dissolve.
May I ask why the principal legal advisor to the government took this long to give us some clarity on this issue? The only thing I think I disagree with him about, or I'm skeptical about, is that he said, or according to the newspaper, Kihara said that the president has a right to ignore the advisory. Is this wholly correct?
Is it grounded on some legal philosophy or the constitution itself?
Yeah, anyway.
To some extent. And procedurally, there's many arguments that can be given.
I think he should have delivered his more simply.
Higher. So can we move to the Star, where we have revealed why KEMSA bosses are in trouble? This is another one that seems a little bit sponsored. Anyway, so it's a first report by the Auditor General, Nancy Gadongo, and in her report she reveals how there have been systematic flaws at KEMSA to the tune of 8.3 billion. Among other things, KEMSA failed to do market surveys when it was procuring, but a lot of it is pointing to the suspended CEO, Jonna Manjari. So the report highlights how the CEO sort of engaged in flawed behavior, excessive procurement driven by supplier rather than demand, issuing commitment letters without a budget, and then spending 4.6 billion that was meant for universal healthcare coverage to procure COVID-19 items. But also, the paper also goes on and says, they're calling for investigation of Kilig Limited, which was associated with some influential people that I won't mention here. But yeah, so it seems like there's a narrative being pushed by the Star, because it also points to the idea that CS Mutahi Kagwe and Susan Mochache influenced how these tenders were given, to whom they were given to. So I will...
Those are serious allegations that I suppose could be challenged in court.
Yes. Who do we give our winning headline?
I think the 405
parties.
Political parties will soon be running out of party symbols. People will have spiders as
the wheelbarrow, I'm sure, will feature heavily somewhere.
And locusts.
There you have it. The Daily Nation gives us our winning headline. On to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a 3-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy? Shall we begin with the Standard?
Yeah, so we have a caricature of Donald Trump as the head of a drone that is rapidly descending and emitting smoke, and possibly suggesting that Trump is coming down crashing after the debate, which has been ranked or has been termed as the worst debate in U.S. presidential debate in U.S. history.
I like
so Trump's strategy seems to be, if you can't convince them, confuse them.
Yeah.
And he perpetually interfered with Biden trying to make his remarks.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think Biden came off as weak
and colorless.
And this was a brilliant strategy.
I remember a lot of what Trump said. I can't remember anything that Biden seemed to have said, which is so sad. And I think Biden had a real opportunity to capitalize on some of Trump's mistakes, and he just didn't come out and do them. Should we do the Star, because it's also
related,
American related?
Yeah, it's also about the presidential debate, and you can see Donald Trump and Joe Biden sitting on their debate podiums and throwing dirt at each other. The first U.S. presidential debate for this electoral cycle was...
they're calling it a hot mess.
A hot mess is being described as a hot mess. And that's why I agree with you guys. I think Gado is very off the mark when it comes to his analysis, because I don't think much as the debate was a shambles, it served the purpose of Donald Trump. In fact, it consolidates his support base.
That debate confirmed to me that he is winning the November election. By the way, he's winning.
I'm with you. I'm starting to get convinced. So guys, let's move to the Daily Nation. In the Daily Nation, a very humorous cartoon here. We have a caricature of one William Samoei Ruto sitting on his signature wheelbarrow now. And he's holding on his foot is a purple hat written "The Hustler's Clerk." And he has a start gun, like at the beginning of a race, and he has yelled, "Start." And on the other side, rushing towards the start line, is caricatures of Raila Odinga, caricature of Musalia Mudavadi, and Kalonzo Musyoka. And they're all trying to say, wait, yeah.
So they were not in the race.
They were not in the race.
And then the gun went off, and that's when they realized,
The absurdity is, if William Ruto is in the wheelbarrow, who is pushing?
Who's pushing him? Yeah.
So it's a humorous one there. I quite liked it.
I liked it as well.
Guys, do we give the Americans, or can we stick to our Kenyan politics?
I think let's stay at home and with the humor and absurdity that Victor Ndula
has given us. There you have it. Daily Nation gives us our winning cartoon. And now for our final thought, but before we get there, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And now our final thought. So this week we've been looking at leadership and lessons that we can learn from different writings on it. So today we're looking at From Good to Great, Why Companies Make the Leap and Others Don't, by Jim Collins. And he wrote this book in 2001. Now, the book represents findings from a 5-year study that Jim Collins undertook together with his research team. Yeah. And they looked at many companies. And the companies that they were specifically looking at are those that used to be good. They used to fare well in every aspect and respect. But then they made the leap to great companies that were highly profitable. And the purpose of this book, or their goal, was to discover what exactly it is that got these companies from good to great, and then take those lessons for other companies that are good to apply so that they can also be great. So one pivotal idea that Jim Collins describes is called the hedgehog concept. And he borrows it from a Greek parable that says, the fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing. And he also borrows his thinking from a famous essay by a guy called Isaiah Berlin called The Hedgehog and the Fox. So the essay describes a hedgehog who is always being hunted by a particular fox. And the fox, as described by Berlin, is very fast, very sleek, even very beautiful, but most importantly, very crafty. But the hedgehog on the other side is just plain, slow, and not particularly crafting or as cunning as the fox. And as the fox hunts the hedgehog using his cunning, he's constantly trying to find ways to eat the hedgehog and make her his lunch. But despite his cunning, despite his speed, the hedgehog always wins. Why? Because every time the fox gets close to her, the hedgehog turns into a ball. It becomes an impenetrable ball of spikes. So Jim Collins says that people and companies can be categorized into these two groups of animals, into foxes and hedgehogs. And foxes, when it comes to people and companies, they pursue many ends at the same time and see the world in its complexity. They don't integrate their thinking into an overall concept or a unified vision. Hedgehogs, on the other hand, simplify the complex world around them into one organizing idea or a basic principle and concept that unifies everything. And hedgehogs reduce all challenges and dilemmas to simple ideas. And anything that does not relate to the hedgehog idea is not relevant to the hedgehog. So the hedgehog ignores everything else and focuses on this principal idea or concept. And he says that there are 3 things that make a company that applies the hedgehog concept, very successful. The first thing is simplicity. Now, in simplicity doesn't mean that hedgehogs are not clever or intellectual or even crafty. Their ability to take what is very complex and distill it into something very simple is actually their genius. And he says that history is full of geniuses who did this. He gives 2 examples. One is Albert Einstein, who looked at the complex world of physical science and distilled it into E = mc squared. The other person is Adam Smith, who also looked at the chaotic economic world and gave very simple yet elegant ideas in the pin shop factory and in the invisible hand. So these guys have the insight and they can discern underlying patterns in a world that seems very chaotic and ununderstandable. And then the second thing is the fanatical consistency that these people, the hedgehogs or these companies, follow through their ideas. So having focus on your intention and doing that thing over and over again not only makes you good at it, it also gets you known for that thing. And it reminded me of this book by Robert Greene called Mastery, where he's also talking about the benefits of honing your skill and perfecting your craft and being able to have a specialization that sets you apart. And then finally, what makes the hedgehog concept successful is what he calls the 3 circles. The 3 circles are about passion, skill, and money. And where they intersect there in the middle is the thing that enables a company to go from good to great. And these things are, the first circle is what you are passionate about. The second circle is what you can be best at in the whole world. And then the third one is what drives your economic engine. So it's about finding that place where these circles intersect and applying it to your business. And also, I think, to your personal life, and you go from good to great.
Yeah. Part B of the story is building a culture of discipline. And so we're told that few successful startups become great companies. And the question that most of us should ask then is therefore, how do we transform our startups into successful and into great companies? And he says by having a culture of discipline. The idea with discipline is to build a culture full of people who take disciplined action. And he says, and I'll summarize what his thinking is regarding discipline. Number 1, build a culture around the idea of freedom and responsibility within a framework. Fill that culture with self-disciplined people who are willing to go to the extreme lengths to fulfill their responsibilities. Number 3, a culture of discipline is not just about action, he says. It is about getting disciplined people who engage in disciplined thought and who then take disciplined action. Number 4, the good to great companies appear boring and pedestrian looking in from the outside. But upon closer inspection, they are full of people who display extreme diligence and a stunning intensity. And that's what you were talking about, fanatical consistency on a certain idea. Number 5, he says, do not confuse a culture of discipline with a tyrannical disciplinarian. They are very different concepts, those two. One is highly functional, the other is highly dysfunctional. The savior CEO, who personally, is a disciplined kind of guy through the use of sheer force of personality. He usually fails to produce sustained results. That's not the kind of personality you're looking for. And finally, number 6, he says, the stop doing lists are more important than the to-do lists. Those things which you must stop doing as a company, as an individual, are more important than those things that you must do on a day-to-day basis.
I love that insight,
Yeah, if you inculcate and cultivate some of these thoughts, then you will eventually become more and more disciplined, and discipline equals success.
Nice. So in part C of the story, I like that he said, successful leaders, these good to great companies, their leaders have one quality, which is having faith in the end game. You have so much faith in what it is that you wish to achieve, and that's you have your eye on the prize always. So he started off by saying, compared to high profile leaders with big personalities who make headlines and become celebrities, the good to great leaders seem to have come from Mars. They're self-effacing, they're quiet, they're reserved, and even shy. And he says these leaders are a paradoxical blend of personal humility and professional will. They are more like Lincoln and Socrates than Patton or Caesar. So there's two concepts I want to sort of talk about. One is called the flywheel, and the other is doom loop. So he gives the analogy when we're talking about flywheel. So flywheel is a quiet, deliberate process of figuring out what needs to be done for the best future results. So picture a wheel, and it's sort of supposed to gain momentum as you go. So he says good to great companies have this flywheel effect. They have this idea of doing things over, building blocks of things that you're doing that build momentum to get you to your end result. Now he says they give an analogy of an egg. So you picture an egg, it's just sitting there, no one pays attention at all. One day the egg cracks and a chick pops out. And if the newspapers were to write headlines that day, they would say remarkable revolution of an egg, or they would say stunning turnaround of an egg. They would give some glamorous headline. But from the chicken's viewpoint, the whole world ignored the dormant looking egg, but all the while it was incubating, growing, evolving, developing. And the idea there is that good to great companies don't have this miracle moment, this moment when the egg cracked. The success comes over a sustained period of time.
Yeah.
And so he compares this to what he calls doom loop companies, who, if you think of a leader of a doom loop company, they stop the wheel from when it is gaining momentum and they throw it in a different direction. And so constantly you're throwing your company into different directions, and that stops you from gaining the eventual momentum, which gets you to the end game, which gets you to the breakthrough. So the idea is good to great leaders spend a lot of energy creating that momentum. And they say that a lot of people try to create this sort of superficial alignment with your workers and your goals, that you try to motivate the troops, you try to manage change. But they say once you grow momentum, these things come naturally to your company. And so the idea there is to keep the momentum, sustain the momentum. And you do this with my end quote, which is thinking of transformation as a process of build-up followed by breakthrough. And this is broken into three main stages. Having disciplined people, having disciplined thought, and having disciplined action. And so level 5 leaders tend to gravitate towards this flywheel model because they've got the right people in the right places and they have faith in the end game. That you will get there in the end. So on a day where we had a winning headline from the Daily Nation and a winning cartoon from the Daily Nation, I want to ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on TV, we're on GoTV, Prime Free Terra.